Welcome to World of Marketing Podcast, a Foster Web Marketing production. Here's your host, Tom Foster.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the World of Marketing special honoring our Veterans edition of the podcast. This episode is brought to you by veteran-owned Foster Web Marketing. Foster Web Marketing provides cutting-edge, highly customizable websites, marketing, video, and strategic solutions, custom designed for law firms. DSS, our award-winning software suite that powers our website, sets us apart. Please visit our website at fosterwebmarketing.com if you want to know more. But today, our guest is Mike Cardoza, a longtime client and friend of mine in FWM. Mike is a unique lawyer, in my opinion. He is a California consumer financial protection attorney who helps people regain control of their financial lives by getting the upper hand on creditors, debt collectors, and credit reporting agencies. He has truly created an excellent law firm business. He is a former senior executive of a debt buying company, a debt collection agency, and a major regional high-volume debt collection law firm. He now brings his experience and skill to help consumers exclusively. He is the author of The Secret World of Debt Collection, Beat Collectors at Their Own Game, and is regularly featured speaker and commentator on consumers' rights and credit reporting. But this is the big part. Trained as a trial attorney in the U.S. Marine Corps, Mike Cardoza has tried countless cases in federal and state courtrooms. He is a graduate of UCLA with a degree in business economics and also of the Georgetown University Law Center in Washington, D.C. Mike is also a veteran of the war in Iraq, and after additional assignments overseas and in the courtroom, retired from the U.S. Marine Corps Reserves as a colonel. Mike founded the Cardoza Law Corporation in order to share the truth about consumer credit and finance with clients and to be their partner in prosperity. Welcome, Mike Cardoza. How was that for an introduction, buddy?
Awesome. Hoorah and Semper Fidelis. Tom Foster. Thank you.
Good stuff.
All true. All true.
All true. And, I pulled that from your bio, and there's great pictures of you there. I love what you've done on your bio. There's great pictures and good video and stuff like that. Okay. So, Mike, thank you so much for agreeing to be on my podcast. I know you're a busy guy, but, we are starting this new, recognizing our veterans that are clients. And, the guy that first came to the top of my mind was you, fellow Marine, fellow jarhead. And I thought we would kick it off with an interview with you because you have been so successful in creating your law firm business, from nothing. And, how long have you been doing this?
8 years.
8 years. And in a short period of time. And now you've created it so it's pretty automated and it runs itself for the most part. I know you got to still be involved, but you've got it really down from the beginning days. All right. So really that's kind of the guy is super successful, everybody, but he started out as a Marine, and that's kind of where I wanted to talk about. So you were in the Marine Corps, you were a JAG officer, you tried cases. What kind of stuff did you do?
The beauty of being a military officer is really you get to do everything. And
that's great.
There's something that's really itching my brain that I really want to talk about right up front. And it happened to me when you said, hey, I love what you've done with your bio and all those pictures in there and stuff. And then it also occurs to me the same dynamic is happening because we're doing this podcast. And I want to talk to it right away because, you remember, when you're in the Marine Corps or you're in any other service, you don't go around tooting your own horn. You're just asking to get your ass beat. And it's not what we do, and it's not appropriate. And so, if you're in the military and you're watching this and you're going oh, what an ass, that guy's super self-promotional, and why is he putting all these military pictures on his website? I just want to hit that up front and say that was the most uncomfortable thing for me to do in the ever. It went against every fiber that I had that said, hey, It's all about quiet humility and mission accomplishment. And you don't toot your own horn by putting all your junk behind you on the wall. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Seriously. And it wasn't until, and I think it might have been you, and I think it was you. It wasn't until you had to sit down with me and you're like, look, man, this marketing isn't about you. Okay. It's pictures of you, it's stories of you, but it's not about you, because selecting an attorney is a trust buy, and people want to know you so that they can trust you. You have to put that out there because you want to let them in to your tent so they can realize that you're a real human person. So I want to hit that up front.
That's a great way to introduce it, because, that's a big thing, because you're right. We are taught to, don't no egos. Everybody's the same. You don't want to stand out, don't rock the boat, that kind of stuff. And so it's funny you said that, because I had a hard time adding my picture, just my silly boot camp picture. But yeah, I mean, what you have, and that's a good lesson to start with, is that when you become an attorney, you have to be able to expose yourself to regular people. And that's why your bio, because it's people are going to go there. It's always one of the top pages. It's always in the top 10 is your bio. All bios, always in the top 10 of most, viewed pages. People will always go there when they're referred. And so you don't want to talk like a lawyer. You don't want to hide behind something, and just list your CV with all of your, stuff you've written and cases you've done. People don't care about that. They want to know that you're a human being. And your story is so great, and all veteran stories, everybody's got a great story, based on, right? And that's kind of what we're doing here, is that, and everybody kind of starts in that same pigeonhole of don't express yourself. And we got to get past that first, right?
I have a buddy from my active duty days, and we still keep in touch, and he does these multi-million-dollar catastrophic injury truck accident cases. And we were at lunch a few months ago, and I said, because I'm always trying to get a new thing. I said, hey man, what's the one thing that you've done in marketing that is by far and away the best? What's worked for you the most? If you spend money on ads or whatever. And he thinks for a second, because he's not really thinking about marketing because he's getting so many cases. And he goes, you know what? I know what it is. I put on my website that I was in the Marine Corps. I'm like, that's it? He's like, yeah. I can't tell you how many times I've had clients tell me okay, we're going with you because you're in the service, and I trust that you're going to do what you say.
Completely. We've gotten clients just because of it's veteran owned. We just signed one the other day because it was veteran owned. That's what put them over the top. Because of our military experience, we have a different way of doing business with people, right?
It's frank.
Right. It's very disciplined.
Yeah, and it's frank.
You're right. It's honest.
You get paid to tell people the bad news, and you get used to doing it, and you do it in a compassionate way, and people respect that. Just like kids respect boundaries, people really want. You're going to tell them something. A lot of times I say, hey, this isn't the answer that either one of us wants, but this is what reality looks like, and people appreciate that more than anything.
Another thing too is that people want to thank veterans. They want to, express their gratitude to all veterans. They're always, I'm always getting thank you for your service. I'm sure you are too. And this is a way in which people can thank veterans by working with them, and a lot of times people choose that because they've done all this stuff between this guy and this guy was not in the service, didn't do anything. This guy did. And a lot of times that will be the final or the deciding factor.
So I totally threw a grenade into our whole podcast.
Yeah, that's okay. That was good stuff to talk about. All right. So let's throw some softball questions your way just to get things on track.
Love it.
All right. So what made you initially decide to go to law school and become a lawyer and then go into the military instead of or did you go into the military first and then become what was the What's the history there, Mike?
Oh gosh, I was at UCLA, like majoring in business and accounting and finance, and just not really doing that great. But I had a lot of fun at my fraternity in leadership positions, and um, I a few good men came out. And that did it. That did it. I don't know if it was Demi Moore or Kevin Bacon, but something clicked, and I was like, I'm gonna go check it out. And I never thought of myself as being a Marine. Like, I'm from Northern California. I'm, John Wayne running up the hill with a Tommy gun, like wasn't really my thing since I was born. But what happened is I got in with these people, and they turned out to be just as kooky as I am, right? And so I found my family, and this was like in the mid 90s, and I got into law school, and it just went from there.
So you went, did you join the Marine Corps before law school? Or did you go?
I got this deal where I got accepted to law school, and I took that to the Marine Corps, and they said, okay, you join now, and if you pass law school, we'll send you to be a judge advocate. And if you don't, then you're going to get whatever else you get in the Marine Corps, which was fine with me.
Oh, okay. So you went, and then did they pay for school then?
No.
Okay. So you went to school, and then after school, you went in the Marines?
I enlisted in 94. And then while I was in the summers, when I was in law school, I would go to officer candidate school. Then I would go on a temporary active duty and things like that.
So how old were you in your early 20s?
I was a little bit older. I was 24.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool. Okay. So, and so you passed, so you became a JAG officer right away?
I did. It worked. Yeah.
And you did that for how long?
I had an active duty career of about 10 years. And then I spent the next, 18, I guess, in the reserves with a lot of interesting stuff along the way. And so it was about 28 years when I retired.
Okay, very cool. And so, like, when you were a reservist, would you just get called in for these bizarre things? And, like, how often?
Oh, man.
I'm intrigued by that. A lawyer being a reservist, like, how often did you get called in? And like, don't you need to prepare and all that? You need time to prepare, for these cases, right?
Okay, what you realize is, like, they need a guy from the outside who looks like a guy on the inside to come tell them, like, you kind of need to go over this way. So I'd get called in to do investigations on sexual assault, senior officer misconduct, anytime that, and I did other stuff. I did exercises and overseas exercises and planning, and that was super educational. So it wasn't all just lawyer stuff. In fact, anyway, that's a different story. But I could tell sometimes when I would get the call that they needed a colonel to roll in and just, take the hatchet to, like, a number of people that needed it, and nobody wanted to have the blood on their hands. So it wasn't a tough job, but it was like, oh, okay, I see what I'm here to do.
Wow, that's very interesting. Okay, so how old were you when you got out?
I retired when I was 52.
Wow.
And I came off active duty when I was, like, in my 30s.
What's that?
I came off active duty when I was in my 30s. So I was like 36.
And so you were working at these other law firms when you got off active duty?
First, I was a consultant in Central Asia and Pakistan and Afghanistan for the State Department. And then I got into this debt buying business with my Marine buddy on the East Coast. And I did that for about 7 years.
Wow. So you've had a very interesting past, in being in the Marine Corps, being a reservist. So what were some of the biggest challenges? And we talked a little bit about it at the beginning, but that you faced transitioning from military to civilian life and the legal profession.
Oh God, the doubt, right? And so you don't realize it. And it's kind of like the boiled frog, right? It just happens so gradually and you don't realize what's going on around you. But on active duty, you're living in like this weird, like, you know how, yeah, you know how like South Africa has like townships? I mean, America has military bases, and you drive by them on the outside and you're like, wow, that looks really high speed. No, it's not. It sucks. The houses are crappy. The barracks are crappy. Like, it's like 1972 in there. The McDonald's doesn't even work. So
right.
You're living in like this second world universe where you have these clothes, you have this language, hey, you're going to PCS and I need to see a copy of your LES before you can ACS, and you have language and you have this culture that's separate from the first world culture. So you're like living this second world life, defending the first world. And what happens is you've got a lot of stimulus, but you're cut off from the civilian universe. And as a lawyer, you start to fill that vacuum with some doubt about whether or not you quote unquote have transferable skills, and you start to get worried like, well, my peers are doing something totally different. How am I ever going to fit in? Maybe I'm just like the octagonal peg that's never going to fit in any other hole. And I will tell you, like, bar none, number one, the most difficult thing to overcome in the transition from military to civilian life is getting past that nagging doubt that's being reinforced by everybody else, especially all the lifers who are like, ooh, you can't go outside the gate. You don't know what kind of hell's out there. Or you're not qualified.
Right. They put it down like the civilian world. They make it sound like it's terrible, right?
Yeah. And you're not going to make it. And you don't know what
right.
to be. And so it's so weird to me that people that have had the courage to join an armed service and go through officer training and do all that and accept that responsibility in an early age and, have those experiences, they can become so terrified about doing another one of these unknown things and breaking through that mindset of like, and when it happens, when you're on the other side, you're like, oh my God, how was I so deluded? But breaking through that mindset and just kind of having faith that like, no, if I can do this, I'm pretty sure I can do that. That was the biggest part.
Yeah, for sure. And so, okay, that's some of the, how do I say it? Some of the less positive areas of the military, of course, living in it, but how you're trained. So how would you compare like the teamwork, the discipline, and the leadership skills you fostered in the military versus those you fostered in the legal profession?
Well, really, all I did was just take all the leadership principles that I learned in the Marine Corps and apply them like directly to my business. Like in the Marine Corps, for example, as you know, and many other services, what we celebrate is delegating authority down to the lowest level. Sure, as the officer in charge, you're going to retain responsibility for whatever happens and doesn't happen, but you're there to develop people. They're the weapons system. And so you're concerned about, is the job a good fit for them? Is this going to accomplish their life goals? What more can they take on? How can I help build their confidence? How can they be more independent? And frankly, I just took that lock, stock, and barrel from the Marine Corps, put it right onto a business platform. And like you said, it has flourished. Like, I don't do a lot of stuff because right?
Now you don't.
Well, I did. Okay. And we can talk about that. And, you got to get out of this, get shit done mentality and just start.
That's how you were building up and you were delegating. But in the beginning, you kind of have to do it all. You kind of have to figure it all out, how the process works, how you need to delegate, who you need to delegate to. And you're right. And it's a different there are different kinds of people you're dealing with now and delegating than the military people that were, perhaps inspired by getting a rank or, or whatever. And you're dealing with a complete different mentality and motivation and inspiration in the civilian world.
I know, I might disagree with that. I think that people want to just sort of be independently actualized, right? Like it's the top block on Maslow's hierarchy,
yeah,
right? Which is like self-actualization.
Right. It's true.
And so providing them, like we would with a Lance Corporal, providing them the challenge and the tools and the freedom to achieve an objective without being told how to suck the egg, and then having the backup of a person to say, look, I expect you to make mistakes. Just go try. Just go do something. The worst thing you can do is not do anything. So go figure it out. I think people thrive on that.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, like that is transferable. People always want to excel. Well, not everybody. We've got like this bizarre generation that's coming.
You get to fire them. Like
right,
it's
exactly.
like in the military, you're sort
They're
of
not all bad, right? They're not all bad.
No.
Okay. We already covered what area of law you specialize in, but I want to ask you, like, what do you enjoy most about this area of work in your career path?
The incredible relief that it brings to consumers. Like, let me just give you a tiny vignette of the case that I do. And then literally, nobody's ever seen this SNL skit, right? That's still alive, but it's the cheeseburger, chips, and Pepsi. Like, my firm only does 3 things, and they're all sort of related to this, and that's all we do. If you're practicing door law, which is where you put your name on the door and just anybody that walks in, you try to figure it out, it ain't going to work. It's counterintuitive, but you're actually going to have less success and less clients. So there's riches in the niches. And through experience, I found this one. And here's what happens. Like, you get an alert from Credit Karma on your phone, and it's like, it looks like you've got a new Big O Tires account in Arkansas. And you're like, well, I've never been to Arkansas and I don't need tires. And so you call and, they're like, nah, it's you. And you call your bank and they're like, nah, it's you. And, you're freaking out because you don't have that $7,000. And then you call me and I say, oh yeah, no, this happens all the time. You're going to dispute this stuff and they're going to send it to some weird country where, they get paid in vegetables and it's a totally fake investigation and no one cares and they think that you're just going to go away. So we end up suing these big banks and they roll in with their big lawyers and they want to, and then everybody bills everything up. And then finally, we settle for some massive amount of money like 2 years later and they fix the guy's credit report over and over and over and over again.
Well, thank goodness there's guys like you. What's your competition?
I wish there was some, but there's not. Unfortunately, the market is totally underserved, and I'm trying to recruit lawyers into this practice all the time.
Wow. So this is another, I know you're the only one that does this in all of that I've ever known, really. I think, yeah. Or somebody does something kind of like you, but not the same thing. Okay. So what advice would you give other veterans considering law school and pursuing this career path?
Somebody told me a funny comment the other day. They said, I said, I was older when I went to law school. And they're like, how old? I said, well, I was 24. And most everybody else was 22. And she said, oh, K through L. And I said, well, what's that? Well, that's where, you go to kindergarten and then you go to college and then you don't know exactly what you want to do. So you take the LSAT and you just go to law school. Like, that is a recipe for disaster because, you don't know whether you want to be a lawyer or not. If you're a veteran, you have an idea. You've been around the block, trust me, a lot more than all these other people have. And if you're thinking about going to law school, it's probably because you want to be a lawyer and you want to do stuff. And my advice to you is don't get hung up on trying to check the box for other people. Like a lot of times in the military, you're going to need to do this training and have that certification and get this badge and wear that ribbon, just so people that are going to think you're real. The same thing can happen when you're going to law school. You're like, oh, well, I got to go to Georgetown and take out $200,000 in debt. Like, no, you don't, because it's not going to actually make any bit of difference unless you're trying to be one of those like 22-year-olds that's trying to get hired as a junior associate by some big firm who's never going to see the inside of a courtroom for the next decade. You don't need to go to law school to impress anybody. Everybody hates lawyers anyway. The important thing is that you have a license to practice, you understand how the law works, and you can go from there.
That's great advice. That's great advice. I mean, and you can choose your path. You can choose whether you want to be just another cog in the machine, and have that safe thing happening, go work for a defense firm or whatever, and insurance companies, that's a grind. Or you do what you do and be in charge of your own destiny, be in charge of your own thing, but you have freedom. There's stresses. There's, it's not always daisies and roses, but it's a lot better. Like I said a long time ago, I'm totally unemployable. I cannot work for anybody else. I learned that, like I had a hard time getting through the Marine Corps, man. Truly. So I'm one of those guys that I had to do this because there was no way I was going to work for anybody else. Right.
And now you work for all of us, Tom.
It's true. That's true. I do work for all of you guys. That's true. Okay. What are all right. So you've gotten out there, you've been doing this for 8 years as your own business. What are some of the pitfalls to stay away from?
Doing it all yourself, being a control freak, feeling like, every client needs you specifically to do their thing. This happens a lot with criminal defense attorneys. I'll say, hey, what's your growth plan? Well, I only got so many hours in the day and all my clients want me. Right. No, they don't. You think they do. And that might be partly ego driven, or it might be partly fear driven that someone else is going to take your cases or you're not, that awesome. But they want they don't necessarily need Mike Cardoza. They need the Mike Cardoza experience. They need the Mike Cardoza product. They need the Mike Cardoza treatment, and they need the Mike Cardoza results.
Right. I was going to say that.
That can't happen. That can't happen for hundreds of clients if I'm only sleeping 2 hours a night. I mean, no way, Jose. So, I think the question was like, what are the pitfalls? The pitfall is thinking that you got to do it all. And when you spin your mind around to, wait a minute, am I practicing law or am I running a business or am I doing both? And which is what and what? Hey, look, if there's things that you don't like about your business, that's perfect. You've just identified a way to grow because you're going to bring somebody in who actually likes doing that stuff. Believe it or not, if you don't like accounting, there's a guy or a girl out there that is super geeked out about it and totally excited to have that responsibility. So don't fall into this mindset of I'm just going to be one guy who gets everything done because I'm a Superman, because that's not the way. You might serve 20 clients a year that way, but you're not going to serve 200.
And some of that comes from distrust, and yes, some of it comes from control. But you're right. There's tons of services that support lawyers in every aspect: accounting, business, mentoring, marketing. And so, let me ask this question more specifically. Are there certain companies or certain areas that lawyers should stay away from? Were you hit early on by some scams and you could save somebody from?
Yeah, I think expensive money is a little bit dangerous. As soon as you have a law license, the lenders are going to come after you, like throwing lots of money at you, maybe before you need it, and it's going to be expensive money. The marketers, no offense, will come after you, but it's a different situation than Foster. You're going to have this super awesome looking website, but what you don't realize is that you'll own none of your own content. You won't own the website, and it actually looks just like every other website, but you don't realize that because you haven't done the research. So, planning, I guess, as Dwight Eisenhower said, the plan is worthless, but planning is everything. And so my biggest piece of advice might be, plan, and then plan again. Measure 3 times.
Yeah, good loops. Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you think your military background gives you an advantage or unique perspective as a lawyer compared to non-veterans?
Oh my gosh. I've been to the war, and whether you have or not, you've dealt with stressful situations in training. People have gotten hurt. Somebody probably that's died, and things have looked a little bleak sometimes. But none of that's happening out here. Nobody's bleeding. Nobody's getting shot. You're not doing any CPR. Like, it ain't that big of a deal. And so you, as a military officer, you've got this just larger perspective on the whole game, and you're not sucked down into, the snotty email exchange about who's going to win some motion on whatever, because you know that in the grand scheme of things, it really doesn't matter.
Right. You're thicker skinned.
You're just a bigger perspective, just a greater experience level.
And I would say you're right about that. You're trained to handle the stressors better. You're more calm, probably more confident than others. Although there's a change that you've got to go through from becoming military to non-military, and get your confidence in that world for sure. Okay, so looking back, and then you've kind of already said this, but how instrumental was your military service in shaping who you are today? Well, I mean,
it's sort of a double-edged sword. I stayed so long, and I'm so into it that, I realized.
You miss it?
No. And here's why. Because I'm living it. Like, all my friends are Marine. Look, you're a Marine. Like, yeah. I can't. I'm living it. I'm living
get away from it.
Yeah. And so, it programmed me at an early age, and I don't think I'll ever be deprogrammed, nor do I particularly want to. And whether you served, 4 years or 40, you're going to have that imprint with you forever. Look, when you went in the military, you knew nothing about being in the military. Oh my God, it was the most foreign world that you'd ever encountered in your entire life. But you had the courage and fortitude to go there. And a lot of things remained a mystery even years into it. But you went ahead anyway, even though you couldn't see where it was going. And you did your best and you figured it out. And, your transition to the civilian world is the same, only easier, because it's actually all been done before. You can read about it in books. There's people there to help you, and no one's yelling at you.
Yeah, that's true. That's right. No one's yelling at you while they're helping you. They're, help yelling. There's tons of mentors out there for sure to get you going. That's so funny. So on that note, and you kind of said something close to this, but can you name your biggest mistake when it comes to marketing and the business of your law firm?
Oh, God, I had this on the tip of my tongue. I forgot, and because it's big. Can we come back to it?
Yes, we'll come back.
It'll pop out.
Maybe this will, because now this is the opposite question. What is the best thing that you've done from a marketing perspective that had the most significant impact on your growth on the growth of your law firm?
I learned to be a marketer. I learned, I studied like real marketing, like Dan Kennedy, let me help people in the direction, right? Dan Kennedy, direct marketing, what's going on? Like, I just have to enter the conversation that's happening in my customer's mind. My potential client, worth thousands of dollars, is freaking the hell out because Credit Karma says they have a Big O Tires account in Arkansas and they've never been there. Like, so who do I want to talk to? I'm not going to say like, I'm the greatest lawyer in the world and, call me for anything, because it's going to burn down my phone and I'll never find these particular people that I'm looking for. So what I'm going to say instead is like, hey, did you wake up to discover a Big O Tires account on your Credit Karma from Arkansas? And is that not yours? Like, those people are like, oh my gosh, he knows exactly what I'm talking about. He knows exactly how I feel. And he can predict the future because he does hundreds of these cases every year. I've got to have you. And in fact, I'll tell you, that kind of marketing is so effective that I've had negative reviews from people who didn't have a case because the facts didn't qualify and they were so upset. And I said, look, I just don't think there's a case here. Other people might disagree. So let me give you a link to other attorneys. And they say, no, I have to have you. I've seen you on the internet and you have all these reviews and I'm pretty sure that you're the attorney for me. And I'm thinking like, wow, that's crazy. If I went to a cardiologist and they said, you don't have a heart problem, would I be like, no, cut me open anyway? But that's, that's what happens. And so, I'd say the most effective thing I did was like, learn how to communicate to people that are right in that spot where you can help them.
Okay.
And your guys, like, the internet, the website, it's like your house. Like, people want to come to visit it. Everything comes off of it. Everybody goes to it. It's not nice to have. It is you. Like, that's your existence. Google looks at it. Everyone, all that other stuff. And, it's got to be a trust buy because it goes on forever and it has so many permutations you don't even understand. And what I appreciated about my early experience was that, like, you and your guys taught me what was behind it. I'm like, I'm going to write an article about what, and I remember, I think it was John, he was like, why are you going to do that? Like, do you want those people? I'm like, well, no. He's like, then don't write anything about anything you don't want, because that's what you'll get. You're like a bug magnet, right? You want to be the right color to get the right kind of bug. So there's a whole philosophy behind it. We're not just like throwing up web pages and, hoping that we, top 10 of Google. Like, look,
a lot of people are, and a lot of, most lawyers are still doing that game.
It totally doesn't work.
I had a look, and I know that you've had lots of experience with pay-per-click and going through all of that, and you've honed down your content to now you understand who your avatar client is, who your perfect client is, and you're right, that's who you speak to. But it's hilarious. I just had a conversation with a client this week that was complaining about the kind of leads that they're getting. They're getting hundreds, but they're no good. And why? They are spending money on pay-per-click for all of those terrible keywords because they are not paying attention to their pay-per-click person that's doing it for them. They're just sending them a blank check. They're just sending them a check. And they, it's like, anyway, it's all the wrong keywords. It's bringing them the wrong types of people. And that's one of the areas, like, lawyers jump into this marketing game without being properly trained. And they get, right? And they see what other people are doing. They're like, I'm just going to do that. And they hear pay-per-click is the way to go. And they all jump on that train. And there's so many marketing, pros out there for pay-per-click that you can just lose so much money on doing that. And, you learned early on how you needed to speak to your avatar client. And what did we do? We did something really smart early on, like built that database.
Yeah, of all the debt collectors.
Yeah.
It was Tate, Matt. He says,
Tate,
hey, I got an idea for you. Why don't Why don't you go to this, Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and see who all the debt collectors are that people are complaining about, and then, pick the top 75 and then write a page on each of them. I mean, that still pays today. And when they go out of business, I just remove the page. But you and your guys like taught me this. And I think it was also Matt who taught me this lesson about the riches and the niches. And it was really powerful because I think he said, hey, Procter and Gamble, like, what do they make? And I'm like, it's toothpaste. There's also like laundry soap. And he goes, Procter and Gamble makes one thing. They only make one thing. It's soap. Okay. And it's soap for the teeth. It's soap for the driveway. It's soap for your laundry. It's soap for your dishes. It's soap for the washing that you're doing by hand. Soap for your hair. It's soap for your skin. Like, are those soaps really all that different? And I'm like, oh my God. And what happened? And he goes, now watch this, right? Like, that's 20 soaps. Okay. Here's what's happened in the last 10 years. They've fragmented the market. And so now when you go into Petco, there's dog soap, there's cat soap, there's like beaver soap, and then there's like dog soap for sensitive dogs, dog soap for curly-haired dogs, dog soap for dandruff-haired dogs, dog soap for Dobermans. All right, look, if you have a Doberman with dandruff and you go into Petco, you're not going to see anything else. Once you see Doberman dandruff pet soap, dog soap, you're grabbing that thing and hanging on to it for dear life. In fact, you'll probably buy 2 just in case they run out, right? That's how committed you are to that product, but it's the same exact juice that's in every other bottle on the shelf. So look, you see it today. Like, I'm the divorce attorney for men, right? Because men are going to feel comfortable about it. Hey, my ex-wife is screwing me this way and that way, and so how do I do? Niche yourself down, and even if you got to kind of just fake it a little bit and add some kind of neat twist onto it, do that, because people are going to find that to be a differentiator, and they're going to find it to be special for them.
Yes, I totally agree with you. Like, we've got becoming like a high volume personal injury attorney is very attractive because of the money that a lot of these guys make, but there's way more guys not making that kind of money that are in that business. That is a tough business to get in. That is a volume-based business, getting those car accidents. You only hear about the big cases, and you hear the big money that they first talk about. You don't actually hear about what actually was paid out at the end of the day, right?
Mm-hmm.
Years later, the actual amount of money that was settled on or that you put in your pocket. So don't be, seduced by that. Right off the bat, I mean, like, that's just a tough business.
Yeah, it is. In fact, the way to make money in that business is start with a whole bunch of money, do a whole bunch of advertising, and then do no cases. You just farm out all the cases for a referral fee, and all you do is advertise and market and run the sales team, which might not really be what you're into.
Well, that's the thing, is like, and your point is that you've got to invest in that. So if you're going to get into that business, you've really got to invest in your marketing there, because there's guys in front of you that really do. Our big client, UP and Abraham, up in the Midwest, they're the number one in the Midwest. But they spend gobs of money to get there, not only with us on their digital marketing, but on television, billboards, you name it. They're, sponsoring sports teams. Their charity budget is more than most people's marketing budget, what they give away every year. It's unbelievable what they do, but that's what you have to do to compete on that level. And I say that because that's being all things to all people. And even work, like, even the firms that are like what you said, what did you say? A name firm, or what did you?
You're the billboard guy. You're like Larry H. Parker.
He's not even right. Like, here's what I do every single thing under the sun. It's really tough to market that.
Door law.
Right. Door law. Yeah. It's a lot of people do successfully, but they invest in the marketing, and they've created a great brand. And a lot of it is that personality that they're able to get, and that's how they're able to get the repeat business, because of their personality.
I think you gotta pick the niche. And the reason it's regulated too, the greatest business in the world is the insurance business, because you get all this money up front, and then when people have claims, you just don't pay it out, right? It's like, right? The gold,
Right.
like whoever has the gold rules. And so, I suggest this like as, sort of an illustration of having a product mix, so have some services that are going to pay you an evergreen retainer up front, which is okay. If you're in the military and you were a lawyer, wills and trusts, all right? Because you got a program and you plug in Lance Corporal's name and out spits this thing. Well, it's no different out here. It's just a different, newer program that's easier to use for your paralegal who might work overseas for $6 an hour, and you check it over and then you bill for that. And your client's got the evergreen retainer for like $5,000, and you bill against that. And every time it goes down, they get a bill to keep it at $5,000. So if they ever like run out or whatever, or don't pay, you can finish their case with that $5,000. Like you're not borrowing money to do that kind of practice. You're getting paid up front to do that kind of practice. And then maybe that allows you to do something that you might take on contingency. So think about having a product mix. Like the answers are all out there, and you don't need to figure it out yourself. All you got to do is be curious about what the answers are, and go around and talk to people and read books and figure out, what you feel like is bullshit or not, and what, tickles your passion and what doesn't, and you'll find the path. I mean, it's probably harder joining the military than it is starting a law firm.
Yeah, and that leads me to something that you sent me, which I found very interesting. If anything, you are overqualified for being a civilian lawyer and a business owner. You're an officer, you lead, you make decisions with imperfect information, you take responsibility for significant consequences.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like
it is true. You're overqualified.
Overqualified for this. Yeah. And a lot of people feel like, am I doing everything? It's a lot. I certainly felt like that. Like I wasn't ever doing enough. Like I wasn't doing all the things that I'm supposed to do. Right. I'm going to get my ass kicked at some point for not doing all the things I'm supposed to do. But the point is that it's way easier. And you're right. You said it. Way easier to be successful, get things done, meet your dreams, please others in the civilian world. And you have tools to do it, which are far superior than the tools that you have in the military world. And the military world, you can barely please anybody in there, man. Like it is, it's yeah, what have you done for me lately? Right?
Yeah. I mean, nobody's thrilled. It's like you got to wait 3 years and go to a new duty station to get a little piece of colored ribbon, and it comes with no extra money.
Right. Yep.
And, just get out there and do it. You can always go back to the government, if you're feeling like too scared or you're feeling like a failure or whatever, you can always like crawl back to the government.
You always do that. Get that, never ending job.
You can always do that. You can always do that later. This is the time to kind of grab that now. And here's what drove me is I didn't want to die with the regret. I couldn't face, and this is what's motivated me to like pick up the phone and call girls in 7th grade. Like I just couldn't go to bed knowing that I didn't have the courage to do it. Right. Like, and so I didn't want to die with the fear that I never knew, so succeed or fail, at least I know I got in the ring and took a shot at it.
Yeah,
I wasn't afraid to do it. And let me tell you, come on in, because the water's warm. You're gonna realize you're not gonna get crushed like we did in Pugil Sticks.
Speaking of, do you do any mentoring to other lawyers?
I do.
Okay. So how does another lawyer or somebody thinking about becoming a lawyer that might be a JAG officer or whatever, how do they get in touch with you?
Email me at mike.cardoza@cardozalawcorp.com. And
go.
I'll be like on the phone with you, within 2 days.
Yeah.
And I don't have a program. I don't have a thing. I don't have a curriculum. I don't have a video. I don't have a product. Maybe there's a demand for that in the future. I'm not sure, but look, I can tell you, how it's going to work based on where you're coming from. And I can answer these questions about, how should I think about my business? What are some vendors that I ought to think about first? And how's it all going to work? And is it for me? I'm happy to have that conversation. I'm very thrilled to have that conversation because I was standing in those shoes a number of years ago.
Yep, for sure. And, I find it such a pleasure to talk to you, Mike. We used to talk a lot more when I was coaching with you or early on when we were, kind of charting the course. And you have moved on in all of these years. You've kind of went from doing it all yourself, then we did a lot of it for you, and now you've got it back to doing it yourself. It's just set up to work, and you've done a great job.
Yeah, that's something you don't get in the military. Like, you can't invest, right? All you can do is invest with your time, I guess, in hopes that, the government will be solvent and you'll get some kind of pension in dollars. But you can't build anything that lasts. I mean,
you can't change your income. So
no.
You can't change your income at all. You're stuck. But here you can, like, owning a business, you're right, come up with different products, it's your business. You can make as much money as you want. That's the beautiful thing.
Yeah, and it's not linear. Our minds are so calculated to see like linear relationships. Like, oh my gosh, if I'm in the military, my income's fixed. The only way I can make twice as much money is to work half as hard, right? Okay. Or if I get on the outside and I'm getting $100,000, I guess the only way to make $200,000 is I got to work twice as hard. Like, actually, it doesn't work that way. If you want to make more money, you need to work less, and you just focus on the things that you're really good at. And I know as I throw that out there, people are going to be like, my head explodes. But as mine did until I tried it and I learned it and it's real. And that's why I said half an hour ago, like, I barely do anything. I mean, I do stuff. I'm here. I'm doing this. I'm going to go do a whole bunch of stuff. We're going to try a case this month. But it's only stuff that I like. And I'm surrounded by brilliant people who do things that they like to do that I don't like to do. And here's one of my biggest, in fact, this is the whole thing right here. Hire people, surround yourself with people that are smarter than you. If you have enough like self-confidence to be okay with who you are, I was born in 1970. So for 6 years, I was breathing aerosol lead from all the cars that were burning leaded gasoline. I am statistically 8 IQ points lower than the same me who would have been born in 1976 before leaded gas was banned. And the period between 0 and 6 is like the critical time for lead poisoning in a child's brain. So I am statistically dumber because of this. Now, if you're okay with who you are,
67, so I'm 3 years dumber than you.
You are, but you're very charismatic and trust your people. But you know this, like, surround yourself with people that are smarter than you are, and empower and encourage them and support them in the way that you would want to be empowered and supported. And that just doesn't go just for contractors. It goes employees and particularly vendors. Pick people that are smarter than you at what they do and just join forces. You'll be fine.
Trust them to do what they're good at. Like that's one of the things that lawyers tend to over lawyer and try to control everything, right? And try to learn. That's the other thing too, is if so many lawyers try to like take on and learn SEO. Why? This is like very complicated. Like, don't you have enough going on? Anyway. All right, brother. Well, I appreciate this time with you. We always have a good time talking. We love working with you. We love working with vets. Vets are different. They have a discipline, as we talked about. Us vets, we have this discipline ingrained in us from the military. And it serves you well in marketing, a law practice, and marketing in general. Like if you can apply the same disciplines to your marketing, you're going to be in good shape.
Yeah, because if you have lots of clients, you've got lots of business. And I hope that all these messages get to every veteran for now and next year and the year after. I have been dying to tell each and every one of them that's thinking about putting their foot outside after their tour is over, all of these things. And so I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to say all this stuff that's been on my mind for all these years.
Well, thank you, buddy. Yeah, and we can use this again and again.
Love it.
Update people on what you're doing. But I hope that anybody that wants to talk to Mike that, just needs a, push or just a little bit of a confidence booster from somebody that's done it very successfully. And I know he started from nothing. Like he started this whole thing from nothing, from zero. And now he's been kicking ass for years and years now. I'm very proud to have him as a client and a good friend of mine. He's been that way for a long time. Thank you so much for your service, Mike, and being a guest, being a client, being my friend, and being a guest on our Veterans Edition, our first Veterans Edition of the World of Marketing, buddy. Thank you so much, man.
Thanks, Tom. Talk to you soon.
All right, talk to you soon.